Hi guys, welcome back to the channel for another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about why all-in recovery may not have worked for you, or why it may not work for you. This is going to be relevant to people who have tried to apply all-in to their own recovery and not had great results, or people who are considering applying this treatment method to their own recovery, and just some things to take into consideration. I absolutely can attest to the fact that I have witnessed people go through the all-in process, that it has been life-changing and life-saving for many people. Recovery methods and their effectiveness are all about the individual. Different things at different times for different people, depending on their stage of recovery, their diagnosis or non-diagnosis, their comorbidities, their treatment access, their resources, etc. So I'm not here to sort of talk about whether or not it's effective. It is. But what I've noticed over the last 12 months in particular is an influx of messages and interactions with prospective clients and people I end up working with who have attempted all-in recovery and come away with a lot of shame and a lot of guilt that they haven't been able to apply this approach to their own recovery. And when we're feeling guilt or shame about something which is meant to be healing us, that's when we need to have a conversation about it, right? Because it can just be something we use as evidence to go, well, I'm not going to recover. It's not going to work for me. I can't do it. It just might be that this is not the approach for you. So for a bit of background, all-in is a treatment method formulated to treat hypothalamic amenorrhea, which is loss of your period. So obviously potential big overlap there for people with that as a symptom when it comes to their eating disorder, loss of their period. This term and approach was then popularized by Stephanie Buttermore, who is a fitness creator or a fitness content creator. She didn't create fitness, or maybe she did, who knows, and YouTuber who documented her own all-in recovery here on YouTube. Stephanie, for context, I don't think at the time of recording, from what I know, has only ever made passing references to maybe some orthorexic tendencies she's experienced during her relationship with movement and food. But as far as I know, has not disclosed an eating disorder diagnosis. This then kind of spread like wildfire throughout the recovery community. It was an incredibly dominant message for about 12 months that all-in, just jumping straight into recovery, not taking an incremental approach, but just plunging in, responding to hunger, responding with the amount of food or any kind of food at all times, which, by the way, solidly and completely support that approach. And many, many people benefited from it, which is why I think there was such a passionate movement around all-in. That then started to take a little bit of a turn when it started to look a little bit like if you don't go all in, then you're not recovering, or you're not really recovering, or you're in quasi-recovery. That's when my alarm bells started going off, was when it did start to become a little bit like all-in is the only way. I do not believe there is one way to recover. I have certain approaches that I use as an eating disorder recovery coach, which I know to be effective and that I am trained in and have seen people fully recover going down that path. And sometimes have assisted people in an all-in recovery as well. But it really the messaging started to turn into, if you are not engaging in all-in recovery, then it means you're not really recovering, or you're not really committing. There are a number of factors which will make applying all-in to your recovery difficult. So I'm going to use myself as an example to give some insight into why this might not work for some people. I had a diagnosis of anorexia binge purge subtype, which meant that I would restrict and then I would binge, which was likely just me trying to help myself in some way with reactive corrective eating to make up for the restriction that I was engaging in. But that would then trigger a purging response. So in my recovery, I had this very delicate balancing act that I had to perform where I was easing my restriction, allowing myself more and more variety without triggering that purging response. Otherwise, I was never going to get out of that cycle. And the way I achieved that was to incrementally set myself goals, to give myself the structure of 3 meals and 3 snacks, eating every 2 to 3 hours, eating within 30 to 60 minutes of waking up, and then consistently throughout the day. That framework, and then filling up those meals and those snacks and adding variety as I went, trying fear foods, not all of them at once, but what I could handle, where I was just uncomfortable enough that I knew I was making progress, but not so uncomfortable that it would trigger that purging response. And then I got to the same outcome that we all want to get to, right? Food freedom, no anxiety when it comes to any foods or interaction with food in any context. Same thing applied to my relationship with movement. It was an incremental, flexible, achievable goal-setting approach, which is what I now teach to and work through with clients. That's how I got there. So when I saw a lot of this discourse about unless you do it this way, then you're not going to recover, or it's not really recovery, that's just not the case. It's just not true. Another example of somebody who might not be able to adopt all in is someone who has zero hunger cues or very sporadic hunger cues. If we're telling people to react to their hunger, to eat to fullness and satiety, if they're not getting those signals, they could be waiting forever. And in that case, we need to implement something initially which is a bit more structured, which brings those cues back up to the surface, which teaches the body, you can send us the signal, we'll react to it, and gets that relationship more in sync than just sending zero signals, right? So if we're telling people you can trust your hunger and they don't have any, or you can trust your instincts and their instinct is not to eat, or their instinct is to throw up their food, we need people's intuition and instinct to be less aligned with the eating disorder. Otherwise, we're teaching them to trust an intuition and an instinct, which is going to work against them, right? It's a similar thing with intuitive eating. I have people who come to me and will say, I do not want to try intuitive eating. I tried it at this point in my recovery and it was horrible. It ingrained me into my eating disorder patterns even more. It, really affected my ability to trust my body. It exacerbated my restriction. That is not, excuse you, Lola. She knows where the camera is, and the tail just goes right over it. We don't intend to have people on meal plans forever. They do not stay on meal plans forever. But we first have to give them a framework to then be able to start playing around with their intuition, their hunger, their fullness, their instincts, to be able to build up that trust between the brain and the body again. It might be that you've done that and this is the time for you to be doing all in. Your hunger cues are back, cravings are showing up, and you are able to connect to those things. That's just a couple of examples of the many combinations of features which might make it difficult for you to adopt all in. Regardless, the most important takeaway that I want you to leave this video with is that just because a certain recovery approach hasn't worked for you doesn't mean recovery is not going to work for you. Recovery is about the individual. I do not have people come and see me and I go, here's this cookie cutter coaching program I do, and we talk about the same thing to every client each week, and we set the same goals for everybody each week. We meet the individual, we assess their history, we assess what their needs are, what their goals are, what's going to make that doable, how are we actually going to get them to the outcomes that they've stated they want to get to. And we tailor our approach to that individual. So if this hasn't worked for you, it's just like medication. You might try one and find that it works for you better than another does. There's no shame or personal failing in finding that at this stage, or just for you generally, a certain approach hasn't worked. I think that's where our interaction with recovery content can be detrimental, even if the content is objectively harmless or really helpful. If you're looking at certain content and you are coming away from it feeling like you can't recover, then that is not the content for you. Like in any community, we're going to see trends, we're going to see things which gain popularity, which people swear by, and it's about taking what works for you, what is inspirational for you, what is encouraging for you, and tapping into when that's no longer the case, when you need to maybe take a break or diversify what you're looking at, or get some advice, some external advice about whether or not this is the right thing for you to be listening to or following, etc. We're going to see these things happen time and time again. I am fully recovered, and at no point did I go all in. I took an incremental approach to my recovery, and it worked for me. For other people, all in has been fantastic. There's a variety of other approaches which people swear by. You've got to go out and find what works for you. And if it doesn't, that is okay. Like I said, if you are someone who has attempted all in and came away from it feeling like a personal failure versus it just being incompatible with your diagnosis or your patterns and behaviors, or just where you are in your recovery, or you're someone considering all in, I would really recommend taking into consideration that there might be some red flags to look for, a few that we went over today. And it's okay to change course. It's okay to try different things. It's just like different treatment approaches. It's exactly why I, in every consult, will make a point of telling people coaching is about the action stage. If somebody is not in the action stage of their recovery where they're prepared to action goals and do the stuff they've got to do, that's okay. They might need more time in therapy. They might need more time with a dietitian. This is just not the time for them to be pursuing that kind of treatment approach. It doesn't mean that in 6 months or 12 months or 3 months or a month and a half that they won't be in the mindset where they can fully utilize coaching. It's about the timing, right? So let me know your thoughts below. Have you tried all in? Did it change your life? Was it a struggle for you? Have you found other approaches which have helped and worked for you? Maybe a combination. Don't forget to check out this week's Beyond Body podcast episode featuring one of our phenomenal Beyond Body coaches, Anne Claire, all about her eating disorder experience, her recovery, all about her experience coaching, etc. Make sure that you come and check that out on Spotify and Apple. Links in the description box below. In the meantime, as always, much love. Take care. Bye, guys.